Welcome to the Event Tech Pull-Up. My name is Tess Vismel from iSocialX, and here's my partner in crime. Boop, 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 boop.
Oh, I love it every time you introduce me. Keith Johnston with i3 Events.
And Planner Wire.
And Planner Wire.
So we are so happy to be with you again, to our viewers as well as our listeners. We're going to kick off today's episode with the news. So Keith, I noticed in my notes that Facebook was adding an ability to charge for access to live streams. So what does that really truly mean in our event tech world, our virtual live streaming world? What does that really mean?
Actually, it means a lot of things. The official Facebook, the official Facebook comment is to support creators and small businesses. We plan to add the ability for pages to charge for access to events with live videos on Facebook. Anything from online performances to classes to professional conferences. So rather than the creators and small businesses, which of course will benefit from that, the ability for associations to also benefit from that. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the next few weeks, but the ability for a small association or even local chapters of larger associations to be able to put out educational content via Facebook, where they might be very active, and then actually be able to make non-dues revenue from that, is huge.
That is huge. I mean, that really, really is huge. I mean, I'm even thinking from our independent planners who are out there who solo, they don't even work for associations. They work with associations or oftentimes with corporate. And there's content that we could push out too.
Sure. It truly is it takes away that burden of having to, for a lot of time, I'll take the small local, chapter of a larger association. A lot of times, just to get people to sign up for things, you had to go through the national chapter to do registration. You had to do all this, and the money flowed to the national, and then it comes back to the local. It cuts out the middleman. And it makes it, do I think this is going to replace large virtual events that, or a virtual conference? No, of course not. It's not built for that. But I think for those one-off educational sessions that somebody might do on a Tuesday evening, it's a great way to, again, bring in some revenue. Whether it happens to be stuff that goes in your old pocket, or the non-dues revenue for the association. I do think it is a good thing. I think Facebook they're stepping up right now.
They are. If I, this is not necessarily news, I'm just going to mention it because you're talking about Facebook, but I'm a member of a community called Eureka, which is small businesses and independents. And they are actually the clearinghouse and judging pool of people who will judge for Facebook's small business grants that they just released the application for last week. So they're really trying to focus and target because they realized for so many years they had a disconnect where they were trying to give monies away and then couldn't reach the people who really needed it. So I know the small business grant that they have just opened up for is one of them. And then this is another step for all of the rest of us as opposed to the big boys. So.
And there is one other thing that wasn't on our list of news to talk about, and I have to confirm it. But my son, who is a news junkie, he actually said last night that somebody in the UK had donated $2 million to small businesses anonymously to help keep those small businesses afloat. And it turned out it was Amazon.
Wow. See how beautiful that is? So
yeah. Now again,
someone tried to reveal the anonymous donation. I tell you. And I think it is wonderful what we're going through. People probably hate me saying that. I really don't care. But it is wonderful because our whole society, who we were as a community in the events industry, who we are as a community, just period, across the world needed to change because it was too much. Everything was just too much. And Keith always says, you're going on this tangent on humanity again. But think about it. I mean, Mother Earth, we were really, truly assaulting her in ways. So
Yeah.
she's like, stop.
Well,
She's like, stop. And it doesn't matter whether you say, okay, that COVID is created in a laboratory. That's great and all, but there's a reason why it spread the way it is and why it's doing the things it did.
And I'll spin what you said.
To reset.
Rather than saying maybe it's wonderful what happened, our reaction to it has been wonderful. Yeah. And I do agree. The way that I think for the most part, the individual members of the events industry, have responded really, really well. Our industry associations, maybe not. But other organizations have stepped up in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that overall the human response to this has been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Neighbors doing for neighbors and in my neighborhood, every kid that has a birthday, they're doing little birthday parades. And while they may seem silly on the surface,
that's an event.
Yeah. And while it may seem silly on its surface, to the individual is very important.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, it's definitely pushing all of us in new ways and making a stretch. Remember how we used to have those stretch goals? That's totally different now. Now we can stretch.
So, different than yoga on the conference floor.
Yeah, so which is still my favorite. I don't care what you say. So thank you. That wraps up our news segment for today. The wraps ups and the pull ups.
There you go.
With us and Event Tech pull up. So we'll move on. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We have a dear friend to myself as well as Keith with us today. It is the infamous Mike McCullen, and he is Executive Director of Podcasting for Associations and the California Podcast Association. Most of you will know him from back in the day with Grass Shack Media Days. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me, guys. What an honor.
Yes, and you are one of the coolest cats in the industry.
Ooh. I mean, I was just saying, when I met Mike, wow. I was like, oh, he's cool, because you know he's really tall. I was like,
because I'm tall. That's what you're looking at. That's perfect.
Wow. Like, he is a cool guy.
No, when you meet him, it's like, is he going to talk to me?
I was like, am I a cool kid?
Hey, we're good for your ego, if anything.
Yeah, wow. I haven't had this much smoke blowing up my butt in a long time. In fact, I never have. This is fantastic. Keep going, guys. Keep going. Keep going.
We sure will. So Keith is going to lead us off. We have a few questions for you today.
Great.
We really want this to be organic and let everything flow. So if we get off script for a little bit, it's okay. But we, in essence, we want to give our listeners as well as our viewers a little bit of what we know of you.
Well, and going right into podcasting, right? I think that everyone obviously here knows that podcasting is becoming a very important thing. So important that Tess and I have been talking about doing this for years, and we've finally been able to do it, and now we're 7 or 8 episodes in. And we had Amani come on a few episodes ago talking about how repurposing content. But the one thing that we haven't yet hit on is associations, and why is now a good time for an association to start a podcast?
Well, I think an association should start a podcast just because they have an audience already. Most people, when they start a podcast, like yourself, and congratulations for doing this, I think it's awesome. You guys know I used to have a podcast called the Meetings Podcast, which I did for 10 years weekly.
Yeah, it was great.
Which it totally, sorry, I got off your question. I will get to it. But that podcast, I started just to meet people. It was for networking, and I wasn't trying to make any money. I wasn't really trying to find an audience. I was actually just trying to meet people. So I could call Tess up and go, hey, you want to be on my podcast? I would get an hour with her. That was the reason I did it. Yeah. I didn't care if anyone listened to it. It didn't matter to me. And then I started doing it with like a roundtable with a couple other guys. We won't go into the whole thing, but for me, it was a networking thing. It was a way to connect with people. So I think for associations, it's the perfect thing for them. It really is, because they already have the audience. Like, you guys are starting this podcast, and what are you talking about? We want to get people to listen to it, right? We're looking for an audience.
Right.
You have to go find that audience. You have to get people. You guys are getting great guests up to me. And, I've listened to your podcast. It's really well done. Sorry, that didn't come out. That was supposed to be a joke, but it didn't come out.
We got you. We always
But
get
so so an association already has a membership. They already have their audience. So they can actually go to their audience and ask them what they want to hear. And it's the most intimate way to connect media-wise, because you're entering their body through their earbuds, basically. Like, you're actually entering their body. It's kind of a weird thing, another weird thing to say, but it's true. So it's very intimate. So you can kind of form it to really connect one-to-one with your audience, your membership.
so,
I think
oh, no,
so. I think it's a good time to start a podcast, and right now is a great time, because there's so much information you want to be the leader in your industry.
Yeah.
And so it is a great time right now to start one. Getting people to adopt it is another thing too, but our clients are really finding, and people who are doing the association podcasts are finding it's working.
So you talked about they have a built-in audience already in associations.
Yeah.
As opposed to one-offs like what you were doing, or for networking purposes, to get to know people. So what kind of effective ways can the associations take to grow that audience?
Well, I think they can actually grow their membership through it. I mean, it's another way to find members to
And that's actually a really good point. And Tess and I, of course, we had the rough framework of questions beforehand, but maybe when we were brainstorming these questions, that we asked the wrong question. Maybe it is, how can you grow your membership rather than your audience?
Yeah.
And so, they have a membership. The main thing is they can go to the membership. A couple of things here is they can go, before they do anything like technical wise, it's like start talking to the members. What I do is I have them come up with 30 topics. I mean, right now we want to talk about COVID, obviously, what you do in your industry, how they can help their own businesses, the members, whatever industry they're in, they can give them all the information they need for that industry, which is, how the news is now. It's just crazy, right? I mean,
Right.
Everything's divided. You don't know what's true, what's not. So they can really focus in and be the leaders in their industry. And they can do that besides not just with a podcast, but a podcast is a very intimate way to do it. So I think starting one right now is a great idea, but starting one in general is a good idea, because it is kind of a marathon, not a sprint. It's like, you got to get going, because it takes a while to adopt it,
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that I think, and this is again going down a rabbit hole here, the one thing that I hope that associations learn and understand is start. No matter what equipment you have, no matter what, right? You need some basic tools, but done is better than perfect. And if you start today, you're closer to being really good at it. The longer you wait, the more behind the eight ball you're going to get. And with any industry, if you don't take the lead, someone else will.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I kind of stopped what I was saying. I didn't mean to, you should write up a bunch of topics.
Yeah.
Take those to a bunch of members and say, hey, these are the topics we have, and go, can you look at all these topics? And then say, what do they think? They could add topics. Oh, I'd be interested in this and that. Then you go to your vendors, your partners, and you say, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. What do you think about these topics? Let them get them involved too, because you're going to ask them for sponsorship down the road. And then also ask your influencers, all those speakers that you're going to have on your show, and say, hey, these are the topics we have. What do you think? And then would you like to be involved? That's when you can ask them to be on the show. But you can really hone it down to like, okay, we want to do these topics. Everybody wants to hear about this. You may not even know, just like we just talked about right now. Like,
right.
The questions are different. It's like, get that all out of the way before you do anything. That's my kind of we have a whole system that we try to do with all our clients, and go, okay, do all this stuff beforehand before you hit record,
So, Mike, I think what you said is pretty much they need to crowdsource everything. Because it was just, to me, when Keith and I used to speak so often on the road, we realized that people were not crowdsourcing. They weren't asking what the people what they wanted. They were kind of shoving information, sessions, topics, content down people's throats as if that's what they truly wanted. Yeah, that's what they probably needed a little bit, but didn't really do a lot of asking. So that's great that should pivot towards now with our new normal, right? Ask people.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Tess, to your point, I think people need some things. People aren't always going to listen to what they need, but they will listen to what they want. So if you can go out and you can crowdsource, some topics that will get them to listen, as part of that, you can also then, get them the information that they need, that they might not normally listen to.
Yeah.
like honey on top of medicine.
Exactly.
And then you have the you get your numbers and you go, oh my gosh, they love this, whatever that topic was, they love it. Let's do more of that. They want more of that. So you can actually see what they like too. As you start to do your podcast, as you start doing episodes.
Yeah, and
I'm sure you had your last episode had huge numbers, and this one just kind of dove down. So but you'll see. Then you go, oh, okay, we need to do less podcasting and more, COVID stuff right now.
Yeah. Well, and this is the third episode in a row. I totally lost my train of thought right in the middle of something.
I do that to people. I do that to people though normally.
Brain farts. I call them brain farts.
Exactly.
Well, so okay, tell us about this. So we, Keith and I are always on the same page about us not immediately going back into face-to-face. Okay. We don't necessarily know when, but we don't think it's going to be this particular year. Next year, have a definitely a different type of perspective on face-to-face. But what are some of the benefits and challenges of taking your podcast on the road for your annual conference? And I want to pause for a second and say the definition of on the road is different than what we thought of on the road before. So it could be a hybrid situation versus just fully face-to-face on the road podcasting.
Yeah, and regional, and
regional.
and
local.
And Mike, I know you want to jump in and answer the question, but I mean, one of the last times that you and I actually saw each other in person was actually you were actually running the podcasting for pediatric dentistry, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just want to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Explain what it looks like. Well, for people, because people are probably like, "What podcast?"
That was a perfect thing situation. Like, sometimes we have to come in and build a little stage or whatever, but doing that with you guys was fantastic. So what we did is there was a booth that you guys were running, and it was fun to actually have to be able to sit in I sat in a lot of your guys' talks because I love listening to you guys talk. I learned so much. Like I take notes, like all the stuff with kids and stuff, how to lock down your computer and stuff. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to need all this for my dog. But that's a great situation because you can, all your influencers are there. So you can get all these great interviews on site, and so that's what we do. We do with them, with the Pediatric Dental Association. We'll pick up all their influencers there. Let's get them to sit down for a podcast, We also put a little stage like we had with you guys. We have a little stage. So some people can sit in and ask real questions. It's more intimate too. So, and then it's nice too, because you get the kind of the background noise, which is nice. It makes the podcast a little bit more exciting that, people might want to go to that event. So anyway, that was fun to work with you guys. And I want to do that more. I've been trying to talk to Dahlia about that, but she doesn't return my calls. I'm kidding.
Dahlia. We'll tell the Dahlia Llama.
I like that, the Dahlia Llama.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that, I always like clients to go into anything, with open eyes, right? What are some of the challenges that you can face podcasting on site, or are there any? When I look at it from a technical standpoint, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the things are another thing to do. I mean, that's for event managers or event planners. It's another thing to do. There is a lot of coordination between getting people. That's another stage you have to deal with. I think that's a challenge. The cost involved is sometimes, you're going to pay for cost for more stuff. The benefit of that, though, too, is you can make it a sponsorship opportunity. You could have a sponsored stage, and the speakers could actually be. I mean, you could have, you can do all the stuff you do in a regular room. You could have seat drops or whatever. You can do all kinds of stuff, but really, it's a sponsorship opportunity too. Another sponsorship opportunity, because you can say the banners and stuff are going to come down, the booths are going to go down, but this podcast is going to live on,
and forever.
And
yeah,
so
forever.
on the new hybrid tip, which I Keith is gonna be like, stop talking about that. But the new hybrid tip, you could actually have people call in who are not at the conference, and you could interview them there, and you could broadcast or just have them on the speakers for the audience to sit there and ask them questions, and you can hear them. So there are all kinds of ways you could bring in a person, who you can interview who's not necessarily there. So that could be a combination as well.
Yeah, and it's just like what Amani was saying. Wasn't he saying different ways you can use the podcast? Isn't that what he talked about?
Yeah.
Yes.
The focus for that was the repurposing of content, right? You already have your conference sessions. Why not repurpose them?
Well, it's true, and that's a big thing too. And then you can transcribe everything, cut it all up, make blog posts out of it. I mean, you could market the crap out of this stuff. You could put cameras in there too, and not just audio, and do some. Do some interesting video. Hopefully get a couple cameras, so it's not just like us straight forward like this. It's some reaction shots and stuff, but you can make interesting content out of it too.
So you could dance for them too, Mike?
Yes. Dance.
Thankfully, most people are listening to this and didn't see it.
Wasn't much to see. So. So I think getting on the road is fun. I have the California Podcast Association stuff I do too, which is just basically a group of around the San Francisco Bay Area. We do meetings all over the place, and we've moved them all online now, and it's been really great. And I'm recording them all for a podcast, which I haven't got to, of course, because I'm busy. You'd think I'd have time because I'm here all the time, but those have been great. Hybrid-y kind of things. We used to get together, which was face-to-face is awesome, but it was just this is way easier. It's I can do way more, and I can control it, bring in the right people from all over the place now. But it will be a podcast, but it's bringing podcasters together talking about podcast stuff, which, this is about events, this show, right? So it's you're bringing people in. So, it's been really fun. It's a different world than the event stuff, but it's been really fun helping people and working that way.
I think the one thing that I've found is the more you do it, the easier it becomes, right? All of a sudden you have your intro, and the editing gets easier. Tess and I are a two-person crew, so we do all the work on it. But if you're in a professional setting where at a conference or whatever it is, you're handing that file off to someone else, the turnaround time on a podcast can be actually amazingly fast if you don't have to do a ton of editing. So an hour after that session happens, you can be pushing that out to the people who aren't at the conference.
Yeah. And we've done that in the past too, where we're sending them at the conference, just taking the file, sending them to somebody else who's editing them, and they're live immediately, just which has been fun. But no one at a conference is really listening to a podcast then. It's a cool thing to do. But
those people at home are.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
And that new hybrid is going to be different.
And then they'll get the FOMO too. Yeah.
I think people will be consuming content these same virtual ways more than prior. So it's important to really truly look at that audience who's going to join you in a different way.
And the tools for doing this stuff is getting better. I bought this Pro Roadcaster thing. I don't know technical stuff.
Oh yeah, come on, show and tell. Show and tell.
This thing. Sorry, I pull it out. But oh my gosh, this thing I've just been playing with it a little bit. It's it's this.
Ooh.
Yeah, but it has the preset stuff in it right here, so you can sit down and all the intros, hit them, boom, 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 everything's done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Keith, you gotta get that.
Amazing piece of equipment. Like, amazing. You just, anyway, I won't go into that, but I was just saying, you can make it so easy now to do. This actually, I bought this to bring on site. Actually, I was thinking, okay, I can go straight from here and do exactly what you said. Intro, boom,
Yeah, there, boom, 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 boom. Again, and not only making the whole package easier to produce, it again shortens that turnaround time.
Yeah. But we don't. I mean, it's easy to on-site stuff is just to use. What we do is just use the master AV. We just say this is what we need. We don't bring in anything but a recorder, basically.
Yeah.
Make it easy for the planner.
Well, and that's a good point too. For a lot of conferences, you already have the room set up for it. If you don't now, again, if you want to do it on the show floor to bring attendees onto the show floor, yes, you're going to PSAV or, whoever your AV company is, they're going to have to set that up for you and you're going to need all that equipment. But if you already have a room that's dark on certain days,
exactly.
You're right.
The AV's there and you're already paying for the guys to be there. So you might as well
sending people in, just send people in.
Yeah. And you should be careful too. I just say this in general make sure that audio guy knows what he's doing.
Yes.
You know how it is. It's like, this is, we always send somebody, like when we went to you, Chris went with me, he's a sound engineer.
Yeah, but so let's talk about that. I know we have another question in a different area, but let's talk about that. Like, what if I'm a planner and I'm trying to prepare for this? That's probably a very small tidbit that I won't ever think about. Like, if I'm talking to my AV company, who do I ask for that room during that time? Like, what skill set
you would want somebody to be, like somebody who's a sound engineer. But then again, that's the thing is like, putting on events, it's like you never really know who you're getting unless that's what, when I had my, when I had my old company, production company, they hired us because we brought all our same guys in every time. That was really what we differentiated between having PSAV or whoever there. We had the same guys. Hey, it's Mike, my A1. I remember Mike, he knows all the executives. It's like, they're comfortable with Mike, they're comfortable with Tess. It's like, that's the thing. That's the event industry, right? So it is hard. It's like, maybe you make sure that that guy can, ask those questions to say that sound guy has to know what he's doing. If they'll say, yeah, but it's like, you gotta
no. He really
and you know how it works. Like, you really gotta he has to, like, this is important, and then that guy has to know he can't be just he can't be like just clocking in that day, dialing it in. He's got to be on. No. So I know that's the event stuff, right? That's why we're professionals. Like,
absolutely.
The little things to run in. So if an event planner is planning to do this, they should do that. Get on that person and be like, you know what you're doing. This is important. Fresh batteries, the whole.
Yeah. Well, and you make a really good point, right? With a podcast, the most important thing is the audio.
Oh.
Yes.
That's what it is. Actually, even video, the most important thing is the audio.
Right.
People will sit through a crappy video if the sound is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have to hear you. And as Mike said, we're entering your body, so you need to make it right.
Yes, they're tickling your brain.
They are.
Yes,
really, really, really. So let's talk about the money, Mike.
Yes.
Money. Show me the money.
So in the rush to gain non-dues revenue, many associations will take any sponsor they get. What are some of your thoughts on sponsorship? And I'm going to add just a little bit to that to spice it up a little bit. Because in a couple of events that I was a part of last week, we were talking with event marketers and field marketers. We were really talking about how that value of sponsorship has changed now and what people are looking for and defining what that value is to receive from a sponsorship perspective is not the same. So again, what do you think some of your thoughts are on sponsorship?
Well, I think the podcast area is growing like crazy. Obviously, more people know what a podcast, when you say you have a podcast, they know what a podcast is. For years, it was like, what the hell is that podcast? But I think the sponsorship is there's a couple things. When you sell sponsorship for normal podcasts, it's a CPM, right? It's cost per 1,000. So for 1,000 downloads, you get it costs this much for an advertiser to put something in there. But for what we're talking about, for like events, this sort of thing, or associations, it's like that audience is a premium. We talk about the ones that we work together on, the AAPD, the Pediatric Dental Association. That pediatric dentist, that is a niche.
Right.
They make money on their podcast. And they make good money on their podcast because it's such a niche audience, right? So those sponsorship people want their ears, and they got them with that. So they're doing really, really well. But it takes a while to get there. So you should start now. Like we keep, when should you start now? Because it takes a while to get people to listen to it. So they have like 10,000 members, I think, and they get like 1,000 downloads normally. Now they've done a bunch of extra ones during this COVID time, which has been great. So their numbers have skyrocketed because people want information. So that's the interesting thing. But the sponsorship situation too is dynamic ads are starting now. So more and more people are doing dynamic ads. So what dynamic ads are is like, there's podcasts historically have been the baked in ad. So if I was to do an ad in the Old Meetings podcast, it's in there forever. Like that ad for Tess is whatever Tess is doing. There's an ad in there, forever. So now there's dynamic ads. So you can pull ads in and out of your shows. You can geographically put ads in there. So if I'm in San Francisco, I might get a different ad in that podcast than I would if I was in Ohio. So it's saying all of that. There's a real opportunity to think about that whole catalog. You could sell that whole catalog of shows, which is more sponsorships, So they have their annual event coming up for the association. There's an ad in there that can come in and out for their next association. So you can move it in and out. So you start to think about, okay, that as you get more and more shows, the thing gets more. Your assets are gaining. So you have more to sell. So it's an interesting thing to start thinking about. Like you can make a lot of money off of your. So, and one last thing, and I know you both are looking at me. You want to say something? It's like the past when people didn't have websites. It was like, I'm old. I remember when nobody had a website. It was like, oh, you have a website. It's like everybody's going to have a podcast eventually. I mean, especially like our industries, associations, event stuff. They're going to have podcasts. It's just people want that. So the money's coming. The money's already here, but it's coming. It'll be a lot. It'll be, it's my prediction that it'll be a nice revenue stream for every association, which it already is for a lot of them.
When I start thinking about it, my brain explodes, right? In a good way, because, speaking to dynamic ads, right? So in the lead up to the annual conference, you can have ad sets as complex or as simple as you want that are tied to your on-site sponsorship, right? So if you are a sponsor and you have an exhibit booth, that ad can be, make sure that you go and visit sponsor XYZ in booth 2502. Yeah. Right.
You can get really creative. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it can actually, and rather than thinking of the podcast advertising sponsorship as its own thing, you can even wrap those into other, make it a value add for becoming the title sponsor.
Right,
exactly.
Right.
So much you can do with it. Yeah.
So I've had clients be like, oh, that's kind of expensive. We don't want to do that right now. I'm like, well, why don't you just put it in your annual events sponsorship page, put in all the production costs, and then, and then put some extra money in there, put it in there. If somebody buys it, you got a podcast,
Simple.
Oh yeah.
Then you're started. And all the startup costs is where the costs are. Once you're going, you're rolling. And you guys know you could start a podcast on your phone with Anchor right now.
Yeah. Well, actually, you make a good point. I mean, we push it out through Anchor, right? Because it's easy.
It's easy.
Yeah. And then it goes out to
so easy. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where I see that too, of like differentiating. You can do anything now. I mean, you can really do anything now with with YouTube, you can do anything. You can learn to do anything. So it's like, you want professionals to do things and you can do it on your own. So it's like, you got to weigh that for your own situation. So if your association doesn't have much money, do it yourself. If you want to hire somebody to do it, hire them.
Well, and I also think that the state of technology today has gotten us to a place where Association A can start on Anchor, right, for 6
Yes.
months, right,
Yes.
and then move, right, if it
Yes.
becomes popular. If you find that you need more resources, you need better technology, you need whatever it happens to be, you can then step out and go on to the next platform, because it doesn't have, it's not a massive capital investment. Right.
Here's a tip I learned last night. So I have the California Podcast Association. So last night, this Heather Osgood came and spoke, and she sells podcast ads. It's the perfect timing for this. She was saying, I was asking that exact question, like, okay, someone's listening to this right now. They have a brand new podcast. You're talking about dynamic ad insertion stuff. And she goes, well, you have to put markers on your thing. So, like this show right now, are you guys thinking about putting a marker on it? Like a mid-roll marker, which would be a natural kind of go into a commercial. It's like she's saying right now, if you're starting right now, which I think was great advice, start thinking about putting where you're going to put your ads in. I mean, right now, like you guys should be doing that. Like think about, because you're going to sell this whole thing down the line.
Tess, take a note.
Note taken.
You guys are going to make millions of dollars off your podcast. So it's like, so anyway, it's interesting. Like just what you said is like right now, people should be thinking about that. If you're going to do it with Anchor, you can record right into Anchor. I know you guys you're doing it this way, but you could record your show every day and set it up for your, your executive director could do a daily podcast for his industry, for his association.
But before, and now I just saw 4 association people fall over the back of their chairs because they're like, every day. It's like the other thing about doing this is people need to understand if you did like the I don't know, industry minute every morning that the executive director does, record them all on Monday or on Saturday, right? And then of course,
or you use this thing.
Exactly.
Daily, you could do this easily in the morning. Just be like, oh, here's my intro. Hi, this is Mike. Da 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 da. Thank you for listening. Boop, here's my outro. Boop, and then you just
off it goes.
Upload it. Off you go.
And Tyler does meetings in a minute.
Right.
And I love that thing.
Yeah. But it is okay. So then also there's the thing too. This is a lot of work too. I shouldn't be telling people that it's so easy. It can be easy, but it always is a lot of work. And if you're going to do this, it is going to be. You guys know this, right?
Mm-hmm. And you need to and you should have people to professionally consult you to do the things that you need to do
and really
along
think
the way.
And I will always think about that avatar of that listener. Who is that perfect listener, right? And you always think about that perfect listener. So I have a guy named Harry who is he's that whole avatar of he's 35 years old, he does this, all the stuff about him. Would he like this show? I mean, you really should do that because you want it to be engaging. Like we're talking about just spitting stuff out there. Again, always go back to like making sure.
You got to take care of Harry.
You guys have a great podcast because you guys are really great. But you are. You're both you're very personable and you're smart people, and it's easy to listen to you, even if I don't care about the stuff that you're talking about. Like I can listen to it because I like you guys. You're very personable. Everybody's not that way. Most people aren't that way. I mean, that's. So if you have Harry, you can always talk about Harry. I mean, talk to Harry. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No,
it makes perfect sense.
And you need to make sure that you're satisfying Harry all the time.
All the time. And I forgot to say that in my beginning part because I'm batty in my head. I had a brain fart earlier. But, when I was talking about like when you're doing your topics, you also have to do Harry. And you also have to come up with a line of like, like Sharknado. Like what's your unique selling proposition? Okay, what Sharknado is. It's a tornado with sharks, right? So they have to know what this show is about. Well,
and that's a good point.
Keith, did you take a point? Did you take a note on that? We need a Sharknado.
I did. But if you are an association that serves sheep shearers, right? You don't want to have episodes about the Clash London Calling. right? You want to speak to your audience, and you want to speak to the members of your audience. That's actually a really good point, and
it's easy to forget that because you start getting into like when I was doing the Media's podcast, it was every week, and it was like, okay, well, please be on my show, for a while. Sometimes it's like, but then you lose people on that, they're not going to listen to it. It's like,
yeah. Well, and it does help to be focused, right? This is with every guest that we have, you've got to spin it to tech.
Right.
Absolutely.
We had, Congressman Mike Quigley as a guest. Yes, we talked about COVID-19 and the financial impact on the industry, and then we brought it back to tech.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So speaking of tech, give us your top 3 tech as it relates to producing a podcast for success, and it can be anything. They don't have to be the same. It could be different parts of the process.
Okay. I think the main thing is sound, as we talked about. So get a good microphone. Like when I just got these new little earbud things. I don't know if I sound okay.
You do, actually.
You sound really good.
Okay, great. Because I did tested them last night before with my California podcast group, because we had a stream with Heather, and I tested them. They worked good. But I think you got to sound good. Like Keith said, that's the main thing. So spend a little money. If you're recording on a microphone, get an ATR 2100. You can find the top whatever microphones, go search, but make sure you have a good mic. Make sure it sounds good. I think the tech, there's the hosting. There's several hosting. So like a website, you have to have a hosting place to host, like you guys host with Anchor, right? So there's several different ones that offer different things. So like I talked about dynamic ad insertion, there's different hosting programs that will handle all that for you. What else can I see? That's kind of real important too. What else can I tell you? Oh, and then editing, of course, like spend some time editing, cut crap out if you can.
Yep.
People don't go in there and cut it out. Like people say, oh, like with the Media's podcast, I didn't cut much out, but nowadays you need to cut it all down. Like don't cut stuff out. If it doesn't make Harry, your avatar, happy, cut it out.
If Harry's not happy, cut it.
And a really good point on that, even with, I'll go back to the Congressman Mike Quigley one. We actually ran into a technical issue halfway through, and it was only about 15 seconds, but we went back in and we cut it out.
Yeah.
Right. Just because no one wants to listen to, if they're watching it live, that's one thing, but when they're listening to it back, they don't want to hear 15 minutes of somebody, futzing with their computer and clicking things. And
right. And so then, for us, like we have a sound engineer on call. Like if we were going to do a virtual one, we would have, and they would be on different tracks. And I'm getting kind of ahead. People are listening about tracks, but you guys know tracks. It's not all baked into one track. You have separate tracks. So if a dog starts barking in mine, I can go ahead and clean that up in my file.
Right.
It's not affecting yours. So there's some things like that. Once you get into it, there's a lot of technical editing stuff, which is probably people don't want to listen to right now, but you have to think about those kind of things. So there is a service that I use called Squadcast, and Squadcast gives you studio quality audio. Like we're using Zoom right now. Zoom compresses your audio a lot now, but so it's not as clear. So I like to get the most clear files I can for virtual stuff tech-wise. So we use Squadcast. The guys who started Squadcast are also part of my California Podcast Association. So I like to always say nice things about them. And they live right down the street. And they're these 2 young guys that have done this amazing work. So I like to always give them a shout out too. So they do.
And there will be a link in the show notes.
Absolutely. So everything that we talk about on our shows, we will have it in the show notes.
Cool. So, here's a great one called Aphonic. It's called Aphonic. And this is a great tip. Okay, you can use anything and you can drop your file into Aphonic, and Aphonic will clean your file all up.
Ooh.
And it's just a drag and drop. So I don't usually tell people about this, but since I like you guys so much, I will, because I always have people send me stuff. Mike, can you help me with this? Oh, I've been trying so hard to fix this. And I'll be like, sure. And I'll take the file, drop it in Aphonic, and it'll come out, and then I'll send it back. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're fantastic! How did you do that?" Well,
but you are still
I've been editing. I've been editing for years, So, but I gave that little secret away, and I hope the people who I've done that for are not listening to this. But
yeah, Keith will cut that one.
Yeah, I'll like make it fuzzy.
So it's called Aphonic. Anyway, and also they'll put your ID3 tags in there, which are the little things that come up on your when you pull it up on your phone, the picture of you guys or whatever, it'll be all those little things, what the title is, who the author is, those you can put those in there too, and you can put your left's level in there.
Oh, wonderful.
So left's level is like, so you wanted tech, I'm gonna give you some tech. So left levels are like when you used to listen to the Meetings podcast when it first came out, like when Tom Hilmer, who I did it with, would speak, it would be really loud, and then I'd come on, it'd be really soft. So left's level makes it all the same, so you don't have to ride your volume up and down, and it has to be -16 is the industry standard. Left's level.
Thank you. See,
that's good to know. It's like the commercials on.
Yeah.
It's the commercials on TV, right? When you're watching a program and then the commercial comes on and it's like so loud.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, Aphonic, use it because you can set the left levels, you can put your ID3 tags in there, and it's kind of done. And I don't know how you guys do your ID3 tags, but I used to do them in iTunes where I would drop my file in there and I would open up info and I'd fill it all out in there.
Yeah. Fortunately, Anchor, again,
you can do it in Anchor.
Yeah.
Does Anchor have a leveler thing too?
No. No, I don't think so.
I think anyway, so that's Aphonic is the one tech thing.
Perfect.
I think if you're a podcaster, that's
we love it.
A lot.
We love to add new tech tips.
And I have a pages and pages of resources. So if you ever need any podcast resources, please contact me. Like shoot something at me, and I mean even now, if you have I have just tons of them. Because I do the California Podcast Association, we have speakers come in and talk podcasting. I just take notes like crazy every time, and I have this resource page that I have that I just add. Actually, companies.
Actually, I will link to that resource page, and that way anyone.
Oh no, that's not out to anyone.
We're going to link to Mike's page. We'll have you send us whatever you like us. Whatever you like us at. Whatever you like us at.
No, I will make a nice one up. I have to make a nice one. Right now, it's just like Mike Gibbly-Gop all over. It's like a Google Doc.
Gotcha.
And actually, I have a fun little thing quick because I know we'll probably have to end in a little bit here. But I had that. I at the library, I teach a 101 class at the main library here in Oakland. And people would come in and I give them this resource page. It's, it's crappy, but you could use it. And then I was like, I have a little thing called Grammarly that I use because I graduated from California public school system and I can't write at all, so I dock it in Grammarly every time, and it cleans it all up for me.
I love Grammarly.
The greatest thing in the world. But I put it in there, but it has a plagiarism thing in there, and I took part of my thing in there and I hit plagiarism, boom, and it went to a site, and it was one of the people that were in my class, and they had kind of put it on their own website. Okay, well I'm not.
Wow.
I did share it.
But that's what that. So then that means Grammarly worked.
Yeah.
Grammarly does work. Yeah.
Well, Grammarly does work. It's an awesome tool. I love it.
That's another great tech tip is use Grammarly.
Yes.
Like it's changed my life. Like it's changed my life. Like and you learn to actually write.
You do.
Yeah,
it actually has improvement. You know what? It actually is really good for people. And now we're going down a totally bad rabbit hole. But Grammarly is
so good for vet tech.
It's fantastic for people that have a problem between passive voice and active voice, because it'll tell you, right? Yes. When you're writing an article, it'll say, hey, ding dong.
Passive, active, whether you want to do professional, casual, it'll give you emojis, say thumbs up. No, I'm gonna need you to do that again.
Yeah, I should be totally honest. Is that I have dyslexia and I have problems writing and stuff. So it is.
And see, that's beautiful. And I have undiagnosed dyslexia. So.
Yeah, but so when I write stuff, it is like it's changed. Because I do like to write. I love to write, but then I read it back and I'm like, it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. No worries. Keith, do you have any other questions for our guests?
I do not.
Thank you guys for
listening. That was so lackluster. I do not.
Oh. Like, no, we don't want to talk to him anymore.
I think we covered it. We killed it. I think we did great.
Yeah. So let me close this out. Thank you so very much Mike McAllen, for being with us today. We love you. And now we have an opportunity to share with our listeners and viewers how wonderful you are.
Thank you guys. You guys are wonderful. You guys are great.
No problem.
It's really fun. I would go on this show every day if I could.
All right, audience, thank you so much for being with us today on the Event Tech Pull-Up. Please remember to share with your tribe, eventtechpullup.com. That's eventtechpullup.com. Our anchor hashtag is eventtechpullup, and our secondary hashtag is pullupwithus. Again, I am Tess from iSocialX, and this is
Keith with i3 Events.
We're happy to have you. Thank you. Have a great day.